Now, David, I only call you David when I lend to you for your first crack. What is your first crack?
Mine's basic, and we've talked about this I don't know how many times this year. There's no D in Teague. There is no defence at Carlton, and we've said this and said this and said this, and we've just stacked the evidence week after week, and we see it again today. And you know, everything that you see when you watch a Carlton game means that the roles aren't unconditional. Without the football is not unconditional. If you're there, defend. You know, we've got 2 or 3 guys behind the ball that are fighting tooth and nail. You know, the 2 keys in Jones and Wiedering, and maybe you can add 1 or 2 others. But we'll talk about that rotating roster of halfbacks and what's actually happening there shortly. But I just want to hear your thoughts on what David Teague says in his press conference, and he forgets one big omission to what's going wrong. Have a listen.
Yeah, we didn't play well. We got beat. I thought we got beat in lots of areas. It was disappointing. I thought we started the game well. I thought we cracked in, we turned up, we didn't make the most of our opportunities going forward. But having said that, I think in the first half, our ability to score when we went inside 50 was strong. But as the game went on, they just beat us in the contest. They were harder, tougher, and then their ball use on the outside. We've got some work to do. We've got a lot of work to do. Our decision making, just the craft elements of being able to execute your role. Sitting down on the bench stood out to me.
Well, if it didn't stand out to you today, it's been standing out to everyone for about 8 weeks. Let's be honest, they're not playing finals this year because of what they do without the football. It's not up to AFL standard, let alone top 4, top 6 standard, and it's not even close. Yeah. Let's be honest.
It's interesting that he addressed a lot of other facets of their game, but didn't even mention defence, which everybody in the football world knows has been their biggest Achilles heel this year. So I don't know whether that was intentional to not talk about it, or whether he doesn't think that was an issue today. But, I mean, even he spoke about the start of the game. The first 3 goals the West Coast Eagles got looked really easy. I had some concerns early, but Carlton were able to fight their way back like they've done in a lot of games, but still defensively, unless he keeps saying, we know our defence is a work in progress, we know it's, he knew it was an issue because they play different players in the roles today.
Yeah, before we get to that, so we don't see the system. I mean, every team has an 18-man defensive system.
The good teams, all the good teams.
Well, I reckon
there's a few teams that still play one-on-one, like Carlton.
Yeah, but it still involves 18 men.
Yeah, yes.
It still has a core of everyone has a function to play in the overall collective, and I think this is psychological. I don't even think this is about where you're playing or how you're playing. It's an intent to defend. I want to show you. This is Patrick Cripps again. So we're not picking on kids that have played 5 or 6 games. We're going to the captain, and we're having a look a little bit wider of the captain as well. This is 10 minutes into the game, okay? So no one's fatigued. This is a concentration issue. Let's have a look at the behind the goal vision of where you can see Cripps has a man. He's playing midfield. There's only about 2 midfielders that are recognisable for the West Coast at the moment.
Yep.
So when you're behind the ball, he has to know where his man's going. Now, we haven't got that vision, but I just want to talk about the fact that it's not one man's problem. It's eyes going everywhere. People laughed when we showed the Melbourne vision a couple of weeks ago. Eyes and hands, pointing. Yep, you got him, you're right, you're there, you're there, you're there. I don't see that with Carlton, and it worries me because if you haven't got that, if you haven't got the psychology to defend, to be team first, and you haven't got an evidence system, how can you get the best out of your group? Yeah. I think he's in real trouble now. Yeah. I haven't said that before. I think that right now they'd be sitting back saying, OK, Juddy said once upon a time, have we got training wheels? We don't want to put a guy on that's got training wheels. Here's the vision here. I'll show you the vision. You make your own mind up for yourself, OK? 10 minutes into the game. So you're looking at the top of 50 there. Cripps has got a man next to him and a man leading. Now, you can see as that player leads, someone else goes with him. We pause there. Now, I don't know what Stocker's doing, whether he's been told at a review meeting, hey, look, if someone slips out the back, you go to him or you call the captain across. Or Williams is a key recruit for this football club, is 30 metres back of that. He's got the whole scope of the ground in front of him. So what's he calling? What's he doing? What's he watching? Is he actually invested in defending? So all these things are slipping through the cracks, and in the end, you just become easy to score against. Now, that's not AFL standard, and we can dance around it if we like, but this is the reason David Teague's job is under pressure right now.
Yeah. And when we say they're easy to score against, the facts are there, Dicko. They're 8 losses this year. They've conceded either 95 points or they've conceded 100 in 5 of them. The other 3 have been 95, 96 and 94 points. So if you're conceding 100 points, you're not going to beat any good team. That's why they're zipping 7 against teams in the top 8. It's why a system is crucial because, look, that was Paddy Cripps. But let's be honest, every player in a game of footy at times loses their opponent, lose track of where their man is. But that's why when you have systems, you can cover that. You roll around. Hey, I've got him. You stay here. Yeah. But because now there's an element of I've got my man covered. Hey, you worry about you. That's where it starts to look a bit ugly, and it's going to be an issue. It's not something they can. I know we had this argument last week. Something you can fix overnight. For me, it's a full pre-season. It's a total reassessment.
It's communication, isn't it?
I think it's more than communication. It's a whole mindset and a system, and a lot more work that goes into it that I don't think you can do on a week-to-week basis. They're going to have to do it over a big pre-season.
Well, you go.
I was just going to talk about what he said in the press conference. So he talks about the decision-making. Well, that comes with confusion because I don't think they're totally sold on what their brand is, like you're talking about their system. I go back to Juddy as well. We laughed at him when he said about training wheels, but you put a guy in the chair because you're coming off Brendan Bolton, okay? The club's in a bad place. And then they go, right, this guy, players invest in him, he's invested in the players. But it's more than that being a senior coach. You're coming into one of the biggest clubs in Australia. Decision-making, execution, craft. Craft is you come in, they're drafting you on your craft. That's what your talent is. And they're not even producing that. We talked about that last week. He's in real trouble. And we talk about Ross Lyon all the time. Ross goes, nah, not interested. He'd be interested because we've heard the whispers going around about, okay, they need to bring people in to help. And I'll tell you what, there's probably one man that will help, and that's Ross. Bring someone in who's actually been there and built a team and done it properly because your club has no stability with their senior coach.
Well, let's talk specifics about the halfback flankers, okay? So there's been a significant spend on Sard and on Williams, who they tried as a midfielder, obviously, we know that. They've used Stocker down there. Stocker had the job all day on Liam Ryan. It was the one matchup that was causing absolute chaos for their back six. Doherty's been moved out of there because they couldn't trust him on a man, so he gets moved to the wing. And they just think it's a one-man fix. That's my problem. They think, we just roll someone back. Sard, they didn't trust it with Sard because he doesn't want to defend. Williams is asked to play a pseudo-midfield role despite being a half-back flanker. Come up, be aggressive, be a goal scorer, be a threat for us. They try Ed Curnow down there. Now, Ed didn't have a great day, and you can all get beaten at half-back. You can get beaten anywhere. But he's not a half-back flanker. He's not. He's a midfielder that's been moved to half-back, and he was towed around all day. And Cripps had him off the bit at times. So I think when Liam Ryan gets off the chain, you're obligated to make a change.
But they didn't. Who else do they have? You've just named them. Who else would you put on Liam Ryan if it wasn't for a 10-game player?
Well, you go to Adam Sard and you say, hey, mate, we've paid you a truckload. It's not about finance. It's about committing to the cause. Yeah. Mate, we need you to do a job for us. Yep. This is a game it's getting out of control on us. It's 8 points at half-time. Can you go and lock him away for us? You look him in the eyes. He said, if it's not for me, you walk him out the door. You say, thanks, mate, but we're not interested in this. Regardless what it costs you. But in all likelihood, he's going to say, yep, I'll do it for you. And for the cause, he sacrifices his offensive game. Now, if they can't do that or they don't ask that question, this is where you end up.
And you know what you get beaten on? You get beaten on Simo Field's a waffle team.
Oh,
I mean, no disrespect, but he's got a lot of stars out.
Great effort.
But guess what happened? His system belted their system because it wouldn't stand up.
It's a great coaching performance. And I always think when we spoke about they had a lot of youngsters out there that probably weren't even, they're not even really ready yet, but they're playing a handful of games, some kids, a couple of Edwards boys and a few others. But what I loved about a game like this, when you have got so many youngsters, you need your leaders to step up and play well. And that's what I love. Sheed was awesome, Gaff was awesome, Nat Nui was awesome, and Shannon Hearn was getting back to some of his best form. So whenever you've got a lot of young kids, your leaders need to stand up. And that's why, for me, they get a big tick today, the Eagles. 5
players under 10 games, 10 under 50 games. And I'll tell you what, if Nick Nat had flushed that talk, be a bit...
would
have been goal of the decade.
He should have gone the Chanana.
He should have gone.
Zach Fisher.
Yes.
How did you assess his game?
Rapt to see him back. And this is the one shining light out of the day for Carlton. He's had 14 disposals, but what he does with it is so clever. He's a different sort of player. He sees holes, he sees threats, and just his ball use was a class above today, Joey. I mean, they've missed him heavily since round 2. Just have a look at his ball use going inside 50. He doesn't blast. He kicks to advantage. He was tough when he had to be. Look at this, straight through a hole here. Traffic coming, bang. That's perfect. That's exactly what you want every player to do. I thought Silvani and Fisher were so creative in the forward half today. It's a shame that Harry went down, but it wasn't about Harry. Look at that kick there. That's just perfect. So, look, they get their All-Australian calibre half forward. He could be an All-Australian in as early as next year. If he's not, doesn't matter. He's a good player. That kick there, that's what you want.
Yeah, he's got a beautiful sidestep. And having him and Jack Martin back in that half-forward line, that's why I think everyone's getting so frustrated with Carlton, because they have talent. Yeah. They can play seriously good footy on offence, and now they're starting to get that personnel in the front half. That's why if they just get the back half right, they will be a so much better team, but it's still a big work in progress for me.
We're going to talk about the rules later on in the show, but the rule and players making their adjustments And have you seen so many concussions in the first 12 rounds?
There was
of football?
carnage today, wasn't there, at the SCG? There were 3 concussions. There were a few more big hits in the game just before it up the stadium. But I just wanted to take a look at this one in particular with Brad Shepherd, who was KO'd out of the game early. But for me, I've got some slight concerns, and I hope we see it again in slow-mo, because he wasn't sure what he was doing there, Brad Shepherd. And this is where the confusing rules about players electing to bump versus protecting themselves in that situation. He ended up opening himself up to get KO'd. So Saad was able to brace it for a little bit of contact because he had the football. But Brad Shepherd realised, I'm not allowed to brace for contact because that gets classed as an automatic bump. He'll get suspended. So he goes in a horrible position that's going to see him miss 2 weeks. I've been really strong that players still have a right to protect themselves first on a football field. It's a dangerous place out there. And if you stop players from being able to protect themselves and brace for contact, it doesn't automatically mean it's a bump.
But what was he doing?
He was running in, he's making a split-second decision, and then he got caught going, well, what can I do here? And in the end, he did nothing.
He was sort of indecisive about which way do I go, and then it was like...
Because I think players are now spooked about even bracing and protecting themselves.
He can bump as long as he doesn't take the head.
That's right. Yeah. And but he got confused.
He could have tackled.
He could have. And in that split second, you could tell he didn't know what he was going to do.
Yep.
And in the end, he's knocked himself out, and he's going to miss a couple of weeks.
I've got to be honest, at the pace he was going, I wouldn't have made a quick decision either.
Oh, it was crazy, wasn't it? I mean, that's...
what do I do?
It's a car crash, really. It's a car crash.
Saad's able to protect himself and just sort of, brace for contact, but unfortunately Shepherd thinks, well, I'm not allowed to do that anymore.
Do you think he's made that decision? Because if he chooses to bump and takes the hit, he misses 6 weeks.
That's absolutely. Oh. Yeah.
And in that decision, you would have bumped as well.
Yeah.
I'm not tackling it that force.
When you're running that fast and that quick decision.
There's no way.
Yeah. So it's just, again, it just opens a can of worms. And, we saw it, they still argue the Lockie Plowman one. Was he bracing to protect himself? Was he trying to deliberately bump? All those sorts of things. It's just got to be careful. And we'll talk about confusing rules a bit later on. But the more confusing you make rules, the harder it is for players to make instinctive decisions.